Up next, neurodiversity. What is it? Both Spencer and Ben are involved in the Kansas City League of Autistics. They'll discuss the history, concepts, and application of the neurodiversity paradigm, as well as the Autism Rights Movement, and their own work with the KC League in their presentation. Spencer is a professional with autism working to improve healthcare outcomes for neurodivergent individuals through advocacy and policy change. Ben has a graduate certificate in disability studies from the University of Missouri, Kansas City. He helps organize the league and facilitate participation by its membership. Please join me in welcoming Spencer and Ben to Real Voices, Real Choices.
Welcome everyone to Neurodiversity, History, Concepts, and Application. I am Ben Edwards, and I serve on the executive committee of the Kansas City League of Autistics. With me today is my fellow board member, Spencer Hunley. We will start off today with a couple of true or false questions. So, true or false, neurodiversity is a very recent concept with little or no culture to support it, driven largely by millennials. That is false. Neurodiversity is a paradigm that has existed for nearly 30 years and has been discussed frequently in autistic culture. So true or false, neurodiversity relies on the medical model of disability, and by that standard makes the claim that being autistic is not truly a disability. That is false. The neurodiversity paradigm uses the social model of disability and acknowledges that being autistic means having a disability. So true or false, neurodiversity also embraces other ways of neurological functioning, including ADHD, dyslexia, bipolar disorder, and so on. That is true. The neurodiversity paradigm extends beyond autism itself based on its core principles.
All right, so if you got any of those wrong, that's okay. If you got some of those right, good for you, that's excellent. We're going to go over some of those and discuss what neurodiversity is. So, what is neurodiversity? Neurodiversity is defined as the diversity of human minds, the infinite variation in neurocognitive functioning within our species. It is a biological fact. This is not a theory. This is something that is common. None of us have the same uniform ways of functioning through our brains. That just is not the case. All of our brains look different. They function different, and that's a biological fact. This includes and utilizes the social model of disability as opposed to the medical model of disability. While initially applied to autism by Autistics, neurodiversity is also applied to other conditions such as ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysnomia, dyspraxia, intellectual disability, Tourette syndrome, bipolarity, schizophrenia, obsessive compulsive disorder, and many, many others. So when you're talking about neurodiversity, you would say something along the lines of, our school offers multiple learning strategies to accommodate the neurodiversity of our student body. When talking about neurodiversity, frequently this is presented in the framework of the neurodiversity paradigm. This paradigm is a specific perspective on neurodiversity that boils down to these three fundamental principles as you see before you. So the first one is that neurodiversity is a natural and valuable form of human diversity. The second is that the idea that there's one normal or healthy type of brain or mind or one right style of neurocognitive functioning is a culturally constructed fiction. This is no more valid and no more conducive to a healthy society or to the overall well-being of humanity than the idea that there is one normal or right ethnicity, gender, or culture. And three, the social dynamics that manifest in regard to neurodiversity are similar to the social dynamics that manifest in regard to other forms of human diversity. So that would be diversity of ethnicity, gender, or culture. These dynamics include the dynamics of social power inequalities, and also the dynamics by which diversity, when embraced, acts as a source of creative potential. So in that same vein, when you talk about diversity, neurodiversity should be included in that, not just ethnic, gender, and culture. So I also wanted to cover some of the language, some terminology, because a lot of this can be confusing. It is a very different concept than what we typically are exposed to in our society. And I wanted to kind of clear up some of these words and phrases. The first one is neurodivergent and neurodivergence. Neurodivergent means having a brain that functions in ways that diverge significantly from the dominant societal standards of normal. Neurodivergence, the state of being neurodivergent, can be largely or entirely genetic and innate, or it can be largely or entirely produced by brain-altering experience, or even just some combination of the two. So some forms of innate or largely innate neurodivergence, such as autism, are intrinsic and pervasive factors in an individual's psyche, personality, and fundamental way of relating to the world. However, other forms of neurodivergence, like epilepsy or the effects of a traumatic brain injury, could be removed from an individual without erasing the fundamental aspects of the individual's selfhood. The neurodiversity movement does not object to the consensual attempts to cure them, but still most definitely objects to discrimination against people who have them. So if there is someone who has a traumatic brain injury and they want to be cured of that because of the disruption it has in the way they want to function or the way they live their lives, that's okay. It is not okay to discriminate against them because they have a traumatic brain injury. So I hope that kind of clears it up a little bit. But largely, it's about consent. It's about how the person wants to live their life and what really works for them, but really about what is innate and what is different from that. So examples of using these in a sentence would be, our school aims to be inclusive of students who are autistic, dyslexic, or otherwise neurodivergent, though there are some types of neurodivergence that we're still seeking ways to accommodate. Another sentence would be, this Facebook group is for people who identify as both queer and neurodivergent. So one that gets really confused a lot with neurodivergent and neurodivergence is neurodiverse. A group of people is neurodiverse if one or more members of the group differ substantially from the other members in terms of their neurocognitive functioning. To phrase it another way, a neurodiverse group is a group in which multiple neurocognitive styles are represented. This gets mistakenly used a lot. They use neurodiverse instead of neurodivergent when describing one person. So it can be easily mixed up, and that's understandable. There is no such thing, though, as a neurodiverse individual. The correct term would be neurodivergent individual. Humanity itself is neurodiverse, just as humanity is racially, ethnically, and culturally diverse. Some other examples of correct usage here would be, we humans are a neurodiverse species, or we employ a wide variety of creative teaching strategies to accommodate the many different learning styles represented in our highly neurodiverse student body. So some incorrect usage with this, just to clarify, if you said something along the lines of, this group welcomes autistics and other neurodiverse people. The correct phrase here, of course, would be autistics and other neurodivergent people. Another phrase would be, this group is open to both neurotypicals and the neurodiverse. The correct way to say this, of course, would be, this group is open to both neurotypicals and the neurodivergent. As we're talking about, let's talk about neurotypical and kind of the definition behind that. Neurotypical means having a style of neurocognitive functioning that falls within the dominant societal standards of normal. Neurotypical can be either used as an adjective, as in he's neurotypical, or a noun, he's a neurotypical. Neurotypical is the opposite of neurodivergent, but neurotypical is not the opposite of autistic. Neurotypicality is the condition from which neurodivergent people diverge. Neurotypical bears the same sort of relationship to neurodivergent that straight would bear to queer. Autism is just one of many forms of neurodivergence. So there are many people who are neither neurotypical nor autistic. Neurotypical is not a derogatory word and has no intrinsic negative connotation. Of course, sometimes people will use the word in the context of criticizing the behavior of neurotypicals, but that doesn't make it an intrinsically negative word. So if it's used, that doesn't mean the word is negative. It's more just going after certain actions and what people do. Examples of correct usage of neurotypical. One sentence here, my sister is neurotypical, but after growing up with an autistic father and brother, she's quite at ease with other people's neurodivergence. An incorrect use would be asking the question, is your daughter autistic or neurotypical? The daughter in question might be non-autistic, but might also not qualify as neurotypical. She might, for instance, be dyslexic or even have Down syndrome. Another term is neurominority. A neurominority is a population of neurodivergent people that share a form of specific and or similar neurodivergence. The word neurominority, again, like neurotypical, can function as either a noun, autistics are a neurominority, or an adjective, autistics are a neurominority group. And finally, the neurodiversity movement. This is a social justice movement that seeks civil rights, equality, respect, and full societal inclusion for the neurodivergent. It is not a single group organization, nor is it run by any single group or organization, and has no leader. Like most civil rights movements, the neurodiversity movement is made up of a great many individuals and groups. Now, initially, the neurodiversity movement began with the Autism Rights Movement, and there is still a great deal of overlap kind of between the two. But the most significant distinction between those is that the neurodiversity movement seeks to be inclusive of all neurominorities, not just autistics. And I'm going to hand it over to Ben to talk about a brief history.
So the term neurodiversity was first used by an autistic sociologist named Judy Singer in 1998. And it was first mentioned in mass media in an article by Harvey Bloom for The Atlantic that same year. The concept itself has roots in the Autism Rights Movement, where an activist such as Jim Sinclair stated it is not possible to divorce a person from their neurodivergence. So Jim Sinclair went on to write the article, Don't Mourn for Us, which helped grow the Autism Rights Movement and the neurodiversity movement. And Jim Sinclair was also one of the co-founders for the Autism Network International. And autistics and other neurodivergent individuals have always been a part of the human existence. Never in our history have they not been around. Autism and other forms of neurodiversity were only recognized by science when there was a diagnostic name given. But treating these discoveries as starting points, that leads to incorrect conclusions. So a little bit about some past history that has really riled the Autism Rights Movement and the neurodiversity movement. So around the year 2000, multiple campaigns, ads, and material on autism helped to turn it into some sort of household curse, like something to be feared, something to be dreaded, and ultimately eradicated. There was the 2006 documentary, Autism Every Day, that edited the lives of young autistic people, so it only showed the most difficult and most challenging aspects of autism. And in that documentary, the Autism Speaks executive board member, Allison Teppersinger, claimed when she heard her daughter was autistic, she wanted to drive her car into the Hudson River and only chose not to because her neurotypical daughter was waiting at home. Now, a ransom notes campaign in 2008 left all these notes lying around as like material to basically scare autism, where they claimed, we have your child, a way a kidnapper would claim they have someone's child, putting them up for ransom. And at the end of the note, it was signed autism, signed ADHD, signed other forms of neurodivergent. And in 2009, there was the I Am Autism campaign, a video that started off with saying, I am autism, in a very sinister voice, that went on to say how autism, will ruin an autistic person's life, marriage, career, just things about autism that are not true at all. So until 2015, Autism Speaks had no representation by autistics in its leadership. Still less than 95% autistic in 2020 and 2021. Lastly, we turn to the Judge Rottenberg Center, which is a residential facility in Massachusetts for disabled people that uses GED electric shock, which is extremely powerful, extremely hot electric shock to the skin.
Yeah, it's for these reasons. This is part of why we as an organization locally exist. There's been a lot of discrimination, a lot of misinformation that has come out about autistics, especially in the past, like since the year 2000 has been highlighted. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what we do and who we are, and kind of a little bit of our history and what we have going forward. So the Kansas City League of Autistics, we're an advocacy organization formed by and for autistics. We function on both sides of the state border, so in Kansas and Missouri, primarily focused on the greater Kansas City area. And this is led by an executive committee of myself, Ben Edwards, Elizabeth Borso, and Maddie Holcomb. This initially started actually as the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network Kansas City chapter in 2014 by Tegan Hockman and Gwen Edwards. Notable past events under the ASAN banner include protesting the propaganda film Vaxxed, calling for better protections of autistic patients, and presenting at numerous local conferences in autism and neurodiversity. So that changed. Why our name has changed to the Kansas City League of Autistics is because the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network as a national organization moved from a chapter model to an affiliate model in 2017. We also had to change our name and our logo as part of that change. So that's what is represented today. Ben Edwards, I would give major credit for keeping the Kansas League of Autistics going between 2017 and 2020, because we went through a period of change and moving through and trying to figure out how would we be interacting with ASAN National and how do we function as an affiliate rather than a chapter. So kudos to Ben for that. Currently, our efforts are focused on implementing a survey of vocational rehabilitation outcomes, but our flagship product that we are still keeping alive is a healthcare provider repository. So essentially, this will allow autistics to give feedback on a specific healthcare provider. So a doctor, a nurse, a specialist of some sort, etc. And they can submit a positive survey or even a negative one saying, I did not have a good outcome with this person, or they didn't respect my bodily autonomy, they didn't respect my neurodiversity. We go through a lot of questions of yes and no, trying to make it as easy as possible to fill out and identify certain factors. And on the flip side of this, we take those results. They are not cataloged with anyone's email or identifying information, completely anonymous. And we actually put this together in a spreadsheet that can be explored by autistic or otherwise neurodivergent individuals to find a healthcare provider that truly suits their needs and respects their neurodiversity. So when you're looking through providers as an autistic, there are a lot of barriers to healthcare. One of them essentially is the doctor's office. You've got bright lights, you've got noise, you've got other people. It's a new location. There's a lot of variables that are not under your control, and it makes it very difficult to just walk into these places. And add to that, trying to meet with a new healthcare provider, someone you've never met before, or even someone you've met on a couple of occasions, if they're not respective of how you function on a neurodivergent level, that makes it really hard for you to reach your own healthcare outcomes, what you want out of your healthcare. So if you have issues with certain sensory inputs and they don't recognize that, that can affect how they diagnose and care for you as a patient. So that is our flagship product. We're trying to keep that going and expand it. And you can find that on our Facebook page. We have it pinned. It's at facebook.com/KC League of Autistics. You can also reach out to us via email, and we can just send you a link at kcleagueofautistics@gmail.com. And with that, I thank you all for watching and hope you have a great rest of the conference. And just want to also give Ben an opportunity to say goodbye as well.
Thank you.